Jim Keltner got his first set of drums for his 13th birthday. Not long after, his family moved from Tulsa, Oklahoma to Pasadena, California. In a small trailer hooked to the back of the family's new Chevy, they packed a TV, suitcases, Jim's drums, and that was it. When Jim joined the Boys Club of Pasadena, he'd been playing drums just a few months. As luck had it, the club had not one but two bands, a jazz band called the Ambassadors of Swing and a 14-piece orchestra. Walt Larson ran the club. A trumpet player and teacher, he demanded a lot from his players. When Walt saw Jim liked to improvise, he encouraged him to keep doing so, just within the framework of the song. That freedom was invaluable to Jim's development as a drummer. The club introduced Jim to the world of performing, including an orchestra gig at the Hollywood Bowl, a huge deal for a kid from Tulsa. The Ambassadors of Swing also played regularly around town at school assemblies and similar community events. Performing made Jim feel like he was really somebody. Jim's first professional gig was with Gary Lewis and the Playboys. As the 1960s came to a close, he started getting regular session work. With a style blending outwardly simple drumming patterns and a loose, casual feel with extraordinary precision, he became one of the most sought-after drummers in Los Angeles. In an amazing career spanning some 50 years, Jim has played with an eclectic group of incredible musicians: Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, The Stones, Gillian Welch, Pink Floyd, Roy Orbison, Eric Clapton, The Ramones, Neil Young, Elvis Costello, Lucinda Williams, and former Beatles George Harrison, John Lennon, and Ringo Starr. You've heard him on Knockin' on Heaven's Door by Dylan, Josie by Steely Dan, and Gary Wright's smash hit, Dreamweaver. Teachers and mentors at the club taught Jim to be prepared for any opportunity that came his way, a lesson he continues to pay forward to young people. Please welcome Jim Keltner.
He said he'd give it right back to me. This is really tough because I don't do this. I'm always in the studio where it's nice and dark and quiet, except for the headphones. A little nerve-wracking, really. But, people ask me, why do you wear your sunglasses, like, constantly? If you were up here and those lights were doing what they're doing to me right now, you would understand. I don't see a thing. And there's 2,500 of you out there. Anyway, that's not about the Boys Club. I joined the Boys Club at the age of 14, just fresh in Pasadena, California, and those kids are here somewhere out there. And I just met them, and it just brought me to tears. Young kids being counselors and teachers and being responsible role models. The role model that I had at the Boys Club in Pasadena, his name was Walt Larson, and it was many, many years ago, as you can imagine. It was when it was still actually the Boys Club. That was before girls were allowed. And I got the training there that I really, and I spoke about this earlier today, I took it for granted. I just took it for granted until all this came up. And I started realizing that was my foundation. That's where I learned. That's where I got confidence to be able to read music and interpret it and play on records at the same time. You have to do that if you're going to play on records. They call you a studio musician. I've never liked that term. I've always felt of myself as an artist. So my wife has always referred to me as an artist. But the actual fact of making records is a real art form, and it's a real particular art form, and you have to really, if you want a career in the studios, which I never did, I had no idea that you even could do that. But the reason why I got on so well with it was because of a great deal of confidence. And I realized that that came from my foundation, which I got when I was 14 years old, 14, 15, at the Boys Club in Pasadena. This wonderful teacher made sure that all of us learned how to read. He was strict, and that's the way you know, that's a good teacher, to be strict, but he was fair, and I realized that. Now, I realized it then that I loved Walt Larson, Mr. Larson. He was such a wonderful man. He saw something in me that was very important, because if nobody had seen that, I may not have ever been able to blossom in that area of my life. He saw that I loved jazz and that I could improvise, and he complimented me all the time like that, about that. And so then as we progressed along from concert band to a big swing band, he gave me he said, as long as you stay faithful to the music, you know, just stay with the chart, read the notes, you can improvise in this section. And when he did that, when it came time for me to do that on the stage in front of people, I can't tell you what it meant to me. I can't tell you the feeling that it gave me at the time. But I can tell you that without that, I would have not had the confidence to do the first really big. I had played on some records that were big records prior to this, but they were records that didn't require reading. It's, you know, rock and roll records, pop records, R&B records, and blues and stuff. Doesn't necessarily require the ability to read music. But the first time I was called upon by my mentor, Hal Blaine, the great Hal Blaine, who played on all the records that you know from the early days, he told them to call me the contractor. And I didn't know what a contractor was then. I didn't know you were supposed to be on time, like really on time. So I was late. I was actually late a few minutes to a big-time Hollywood recording session way back in the days before you could fix anything. These were the days when you played live and you meant it, and that was it. You had one shot. You didn't want to be the one that messed up, so they'd have to do it again. So that day when I got myself set up, I had no cartage either. I didn't know that people would set you up with your drums, so I showed up late with my own drums, setting myself up in front of all the string players, the horn players, all these great Hollywood players looking at me, wondering who I was. Who is this kid that's late? And I probably looked terrible because my hair was too long and all that. But when they put that chart out in front of me, and Jim Webb at the time was a celebrity conductor for those sessions. It was for a radio station. He put out this chart in front of me, and it was about 7 pages long. And I looked at it, I glanced at it, and I thought right away, okay, I've been here before. Just because I'm in front of the greatest musicians in LA and maybe in the world, and we're getting ready to make a record, I can do this. And I did do it. And I went into the little coffee room later while everybody's getting coffee, and these were all very successful studio musicians, and I heard them talking about their boats and the things, and I heard one of them say, I found out who he was later on, Al Casey, a great guitar player, played on so many hits you can't imagine. He said, "The kid on drums is good. Who is he?" And they didn't know my name, so I never heard my name said, but they said Hal sent him. And he said, "He's really good." And they all nodded their heads, and I can't tell you what that meant for me to be. That was the first time that I was required to do that. And, you know, to get to the bottom of the whole thing, it's just that my foundation came, and I'm so proud to say that now because I haven't been saying it before. I'm sorry, I've done millions of interviews in the music business, and I've never said it before. I don't know why. But the Boys Club is my foundation, the Boys Club of Pasadena, which they just told me is, they've moved it now to 2 other places, and I plan to go visit. And I just, and you, all of y'all out there, every one of you who have anything to do with the clubs, just keep on doing what you're doing. Somebody asked me that today in an interview. They said, what should we tell them to do? And just please keep on doing what you're doing. Be the role model that everybody talks about as the role model that people need. It's the most important thing you will do. We all know that teachers of all kinds are that's the foundation, that's our future. And you are teachers kind of at another level, at the next level up, like after school level or whatever that is. And that's extremely important for all the obvious reasons. And I just want to say, please continue doing what you're doing. I'm very proud and very, very amazed and humbled at this great honor. That's it.